Hello everybody and welcome back to Gardens and Crystals with me, Wesley Peterson. And today you can see I am standing next to my beautiful Raphidophora tetrasperma, and I am going to be giving this plant a complete makeover today because I need more space in the corner where it's living, so I don't want it as spread out. Plus, I want this plant vining all the way up to my ceiling because it is doing very well in the top area of the plant, and right now it is starting to flush out a lot of new leaves on the ends of all of the vines, and the new leaves have come in fresh and green without any of the brown patches that the rest of the plant got on it due to me having over fertilized this plant. And it got burning marks all over the leaves. And down here you can see it's thinned out an awful lot. And that is because I've had to cut off a lot of the leaves. And because of it being over fertilized, the plant became unhappy. And then it also became more susceptible to pests. And it has had some thrips on it, which has been a nightmare. So I've had to cut more leaves off and there are more patches on them. But this whole area up here is doing very well and it's coming in fresh and green and with next to no marks on any of the new fresh leaves. So that is really good. So I've had this plant vining in and around this trellis here. And yes, it looks beautiful and so forth, but then all the action keeps growing in the top and I don't know where to put it all. So I've decided I'm going to repot this plant into a terracotta pot. And the terracotta pot is actually going to be smaller than the pot this plant is in because I'm sure it doesn't need all of this soil space for it to be able to grow and be happy. And putting it in a terracotta pot, I know that I will be able to water this plant and let it dry out and water it again without worrying about overwatering it and such, because this plant definitely doesn't like to be overwatered. It likes to be watered, let to dry out and then watered again. That seems to be the best thing for this plant. So, terracotta pot, and then I'm going to be staking it up on a 3-meter high stake in this pot. And this could be problematic for me because the whole stake has nothing to hold it up. And then with all the weight of these plants, it's not going to be very stable in the beginning. But I'm going to be having it in the back corner of this room where I'm going to be able to tie it up towards the wall to keep it steady. And I'm not going to be moving the plant around. So for now, this is going to be fine for me. So basically, I just want to get on with this. And the plants you see in the background may have to move around and so forth because I don't want the light ring reflecting on the glass windows behind me here in this situation. So at the moment, the plant behind is actually blocking the ring shape in the glass. So that said, let's get on with getting in and sorting out this plant. But the thing is, I really don't know where to start. I'm wondering if I need to try and unravel it as much as possible from the trellis and then move the trellis out of the way and then go in and get the plant out of this pot so that I can see the separate vines that I can then transplant into the terracotta pot and up the stake. Now I have a couple of vines down here at the bottom where there is hardly any action going on. Well, this one has, but this one here in the middle is not growing anything on it because it has a side vine which has been growing up here and that is producing this lovely new growth out of the top. So I'm going to actually prune off this centerpiece, and depending on how bare this plant is, at the bottom I'm expecting it actually to be completely bare because I'm going to get rid of nearly all the leaves that are damaged because I can see, because I've been pruning off a lot of the leaves, it has stimulated an awful lot of new growth out of the top. So depending on how long these vines are, if they reach to the top of my 3-meter stake, then if it goes beyond that, I will be pruning off the new growth of the top of this plant as well and water propagating those so that they get fresh roots to be able to reintroduce into the bottom of the new pot as well and then start the cycle again. So this is going to be beautiful with time and I might get more vines out of it and restructure it. So let me just get on with this. So I've actually decided what I'm going to do first is I am going to relieve the whole vine off the trellis so that I can get that out of the way and then see what I have going on here. This could be difficult, and it's going in and out between the trellis, and I really don't want anything to snap and break. Well, if anything does, I know it can propagate it basically, but still, we'll see. Basically, let's just get all of these ties off. It will take a bit of time for me to get all of these ties off, so we'll just do this quickly in fast forward. So now I think I've got most of all the ties off. There's probably some hiding here and there. So I'm going to start unraveling this, and I'll let them lay down on the floor for a minute. I'm really excited to see how long these vines actually are. Just look at the lovely new growth at the top of this vine. These leaves are absolutely gorgeous, fresh and viable. So I know that this plant is rejuvenating itself after having a bout of unhappiness due to being over-fertilized. But that is just gorgeous. So that's the first vine that I need to lay down to get the other vine out of the way. So this is another vine with absolutely beautiful growth at the top, and a lovely new leaf that's come out, and one more just about to pop out at the back here, as well as another one here. Gorgeous! So another vine that has grown out into two separate branches here, and new growth coming out of the side shoot. Interesting. Lay that down and see what I want to do with that in a moment. And then we have this last one here that I need to get. This has grown two branches too, one on each side of the trellis, so it made it a bit difficult to find out how to get it out, but I've got it now, and it's inside here, so it needs to come through here. And that's the last one. And again, this has grown into two different vines. The side shoot has lots of lovely new leaves coming out, and the end shoot is just the same still. So actually, it's another plant that is wanting to go out because I had vined the vine around up and down, and because it wants to grow up, it decided to go out a new branch or a new vine from the side and start sending out new shoots from that point. So that's very interesting. And you can see this is all lovely, new, lush growth. Look at that close up. Absolutely beautiful. And, well, I'm really going to have to see how I want to put all this up on the new trellis. So all that's left for me to do now is to get rid of this trellis so that I will be able to get my plant out of this pot. So out with the trellis first. Easy peasy. I can use that for something else later. And now I need to move the camera down so you can see the amount of roots that these vines have. And I think it's not going to be that much, so that they'll fit into their new terracotta pot. Right, for this part, I've got myself a trowel and I'm going to uproot my vines to see how much root work is actually going on here for repotting. And it really doesn't feel like there's much roots, so I don't have to worry actually too much. It's all coming up quite easily, but I just need to, I've got vines that are stuck around each other and all sorts here. So it's a bit, in that way, it's just a bit delicate. I need to unwind these vines. First, this one needs to go around this one and back where it was, and then this one back here. So, and then I have this one that is on top of that one. So this one needs to go there, and this one needs to go there. So, right. So now I should be able to get them out of the pot, okay. Let's just see. Yep, here we go. Not very big at all. I just don't know how many of them are separate altogether. Okay, so I've got one vine here with a tiny little root now. And I've got this vine with a tiny little root. I mean, the roots on these are absolutely tiny. It's amazing how this can be supporting all of this vine work that's going on. They're coming up very easily. Just trying to untangle the last two and keep as much of the root as possible, because this one's got a very long root and I want to keep that. I do want to keep that for the plant as much as possible, but it's tangled around the other one. So there's that one. It has long roots, but still, it's not that much that is keeping the whole plant alive and happy, I don't think. So we'll put that down there now. And then the last bundle here is also ready to come out. And this one has one long root as well. So we'll get all that with it. And that one's ready to go too. So now I've got my 4 vines out of the pot with their root work, and it really wasn't much root work going on, so they didn't need this big pot at all. And I'm very glad about that, because as I said, I'm going to be putting them in a slightly smaller terracotta pot now with fresh new soil, and I hope that once they're all vined up and sorted out, that they will bounce back. Whew. So that is the first stage of this video sorted out. So I just want to show you some of the beautiful top growth that is coming out in this plant. Absolutely beautiful, lovely young leaves here, and they're very fresh. Now, some of these leaves are probably going to get broken in the process, as you can see this one here, but this plant is in the motion of growing out and wanting to look fresh and new again. So I know once it's planted up in fresh new soil, it's going to have a little adjustment time, of course, and then it will take off again. And I'm thinking I'm probably going to have to prune this into more segments, and I'm going to be propagating those segments that I take off with a node directly in the soil around the pole and let them grow out directly into the soil so that I can get a quicker process of this plant bushing out and vining up. So let me get the pot that they're going to go in with the totem and try to get all this sorted out. So now I've got my terracotta pot here in place. You can see it's much smaller, absolutely perfect. The plant doesn't have many roots at all, doesn't need too much soil. Too much soil can mean too much moisture, which can kill your plant. This plant likes to dry out in between watering. I've said it just before. So I know this plant is going to be very happy in this new pot. And as you can see, I have this monster of a stake, and you can't see the whole thing in frame. So however tall my room is, 2.5, 3 meters, whatever, this is all the way up to the ceiling, and it's going to give me pleasure straight away to see my plant as a big, tall vine. So let's get these roots back into the pot so we can start vining up. And first of all, we're just going to get them all in place. Just put them in randomly so I can get them rooting. And this time I'm going to let some more of the stem be in the pot, because this plant or these vines will probably want to and need to produce a few more roots, and there are more root nodes at the bottom there that will be able to flush out fresh new roots. Big root, very good. That there. And then and push it down, and then I have the one that's going to go at the back side here with very big roots as well. So now I've got all the roots back in place. I will fill up the pot now with soil till about 1 centimetre from the top, because the soil will recede after a little bit of time, and then I can add a little tiny bit more, but there needs to be a lip so that when I water, the water's not going to go straight over the edge, of course. But now I have a lovely aerating pot, so I know that my plant won't get overwatered. It has a drip tray at the bottom, absolutely perfect. The soil I've made myself is a good potting mix, mixed with probably 4 handfuls like this of lecker balls. Probably around about a quarter of the whole mix is perlite, and I've also put just 1 cup of wood bark in there to give it some natural material in there that will break down and give minerals and nutrition to the plant. So basically, just want to get all the mix in the pot, because then I'll be ready to start vining my plant up and see how high it gets and see what I might have to be able to propagate in the soil directly around the other vines. I just love getting my hands in the soil. So that's the soil in the pot, and I just need to go around now and tidy up quickly here so that I will be able to get in and start vining up these beautiful vines, and I just can't wait to see the result. So switch the scene and I'll be ready. So just a quick view of how all the vines are looking now as they're down on the floor. But in order for me to be able to get these vines up and so that they stay in place, I'm going to have to start up at the top of the totem with each vine tied up and then tie in afterwards. So let's get to the top of the totem, which is very, very tall. And there you go. All the way up there. So of course I need to go and get myself a stool to stand on, and we'll get started with tying in. So here I have vine number 1. Let's see how tall this is. Okay, it's well up there, but I can see it first. I need to tie it lower down where it has this extra branch that's growing, where it's much heavier. I'm going to have to go in and tie this plant off there first before I go higher up with this one. It's the only way. So that's the first bit tied off. I just need to tie off the top part of this one now, and then it will be done. Actually, this one has 2 separate vines growing out of the one, so I need to do this one, but I can actually maybe do them together and then have to do even more with the final part. Last bit here, which is slightly taller and good. So that's the first one done. So now I'll grab number 2. So this one is just about in frame now. This is the highest point, and the other vines aren't as tall, so I can go back down to the middle so we can see more of this beautiful plant after I have tied this piece in. So I have a lovely fresh piece here that I need to tie up in the middle here. Looks absolutely gorgeous. And I want to get that up as high as I can, because that is flushing out right now. And while I'm at it, I might as well go in and actually tie the other vines in with it. I am feeling quite satisfied about how this is turning out at the moment. I just need to get in and tie the rest of these vines in close to this stake, and then we are close to being completely done. Now I've had one vine at the bottom of this pot that hasn't had any leaves on it because it's connected to another longer vine where all the energy is being used in that vine to produce leaves. So I've decided I'm going to go in and prune that right down, and then I'm going to cut it into segments and place those segments back in the soil in the hope that the nodes will produce roots, and with time some leaves will come out and I'll have new vines coming up. So just to show you closer up, this is the piece of the vine, and you can see it's got 1, 2, 3, 4 viable nodes on it. So I'm going to cut it into 4 different segments and put those back in the soil. This is just an experiment, and why not? Extra pieces, right? So what I've done is I've pushed the stem down into the soil with the node, and the top part where I cut in the internode, is still sticking out at the top of the soil, so it will have time to callus over and dry off, and they should do okay. We'll see. We'll see if there'll be a surprise in a couple of months or even weeks. So right down here at the bottom of the pot, I cannot tie these vines in anymore. They're very stiff, and that's fine. It gives a little bit more of a shape at the bottom. And as I said, there are many damaged leaves on this plant actually due to being over-fertilized and burning out, and then the plant being attacked by thrips. And I'm just happy that I have a thick mass of leaves in the middle of the plant here now. There are new growths coming out that look absolutely beautiful. And with time, I'll be able to go in now and put some more stems in the bottom of the pot and let them vine out, and I'll have more leaves growing up in the center part of this plant as well. When it's reached the absolute top of the totem, I will let it go out, probably 30 centimeters, and then I can go in and prune that off and propagate that. And every time I propagate the top parts of the plant that are lovely and fresh, I can repot those into the bottom of the plant and start the process of more vines growing up so that this starts bushing out more and more all the way up. But I'm pleased anyway that this plant is making a comeback for me and showing lots of new growth. And I hope now with the repot that it won't take too long for it to settle down again, because now I've disturbed it, I've disturbed the roots, I've cut lots of leaves off, and I've cut the vine off, and it will slow down again for a while, and then it will start boosting up again. But this has gone really, really well, I think, and I love these totems, and I'm going to be putting this plant in a moment in the corner where it's going to stand and fill out that whole corner. I'll be able to tie this totem against some wire I have on the wall so that I know that it can't topple over in any way either, and it will just look wonderful for me. So let me get on with putting this plant in place in the corner. So there it is. This beautiful totem with my lovely Raphidophora tetrasperma in the corner all the way up to the ceiling, and it just looks great. And all it can do now for me is flush out more and more leaves and more vines that I can propagate, put in the bottom of the pot, and just keep this bushing out even more. I just love it. So even though this plant was attacked, it's making a comeback, and I really am pleased about the whole thing. So this has given me a little bit more space in this corner to be able to have another plant or two around the bottom. And now I have green all the way up to the ceiling again here. Just what I wanted. So I will be going in later, and I will be spraying this plant with an insecticide that I have to make sure that everything is clean and fresh, no thrips on it, and then it should be able to carry on producing those lovely fresh leaves that you saw just before and rebound. So just so you can get a quick look at the pot and the stem all the way up. It's a bit thin there, as you can see, but the higher up we go, the more of a beautiful canopy it starts getting here in the middle, where all the growth was coming out and the extra new stems. And then we go all the way up to the top, and it goes on and on and on, right up to my ceiling. So when those vines start getting right to the top there, I'll be able to go in and take fresh new cuttings, like you can see this piece here. I'll be able to go in and collect more of those and fill out the bottom so that this plant just starts looking beautiful all the way through. And the little stumps that I put in the bottom, the propagations, they will probably start coming out in no time. So that's really great. Just one more look at these beautiful leaves here in the middle. Aren't they just gorgeous? Well, I can only say that I am really pleased with the outcome of this repotting and staking and reorganizing of my Raphidophora tetrasperma. And well, this just shows what you can go and do with your plants. Don't be afraid to get in there if you need to go and make a change. This is a vine. Vines are plants that if there are any part of the plant that aren't working out or if something happens, you can go in and prune back Just cut in between each node at the internode, and you can propagate in water, or you can propagate those parts back straight into the same pot and keep the soil moist but not wet or soaking wet, just moist, just right. And that's why it's perfect to do that if you have a terracotta pot for a plant like this that doesn't like to stay too wet. So you know the water can evaporate out from the sides and the bottom, and then you should be fine to propagate around the bottom of the pot and let your plant flush out. While I'm here, I can give you a couple of care tips about this plant that seem to work for me. The soil, as you saw earlier, an aerating kind of soil, a good garden mix. You can put perlite in it, you can put leca balls in it, you can put pieces of bark in it. Make sure it's loose and airy so that water can flow through and it doesn't compact and it doesn't stay soggy and wet, because this plant doesn't like to have wet feet for too long unless it's just slightly moist. That is okay. The plant likes a lot of bright, indirect light to do very well, but this plant also does well actually in areas of your room where there's less light, but not extremely low light. It will grow slower and the leaves may get smaller, but if this plant is in the ideal conditions, bright indirect light, you will get a lot of fast growth on this plant. It grows very fast. It's easy to propagate, cut at the internodes, and water propagate. You can propagate in soil, and you can propagate in sphagnum moss or any other kind of medium you have. You can also do air root propagations where you leave the vine on the plant and then put a plastic bag or some kind of container around the node, and then it will produce roots. And when they become big enough, you can prune that from the mother plant and you will have a whole new plant without much fuss, because then it would have had the nutrients from the mother plant until it's completely ready with its own roots, and then it's just a matter of removing it, right? Spray the plant over, keep the leaves clean so that it can photosynthesize as good as possible. If you do see insects on your plant, like this one has had thrips, you can go in with an insecticide and spray all that off and wipe off the leaves as much as you can to get rid of those. Fertilizing. I would say be extremely careful with the fertilizing of this plant. It really doesn't like a lot of unnatural kind of fertilizers, and I actually used these slow releasing fertilizer balls that you can buy in most nurseries, and that really didn't work well with this plant. It burned out the leaves, it got burnt spots, became weak, and got infected by insects. So the fertilization, I would say get something that is organic. I would say get a liquid fertilizer, and I would say only fertilize this plant in a very small dose of natural fertilizer when it's growing out, but definitely not too often and definitely not too much, because it really will not do your plant benefit. It will actually do damage to your plant, and that is what I've seen with this plant. But it's making a comeback. That has gone through. Now the plant is in absolutely new soil with none of those slow releasing fertilizer in the pot. So now it can start afresh with completely fresh new soil, and it should really start taking off well again for me, because I've had this plant, around a year nearly or so, and it has been growing for me the whole time. So that's really, really good. I have done a video where I propagated this plant, and I have those propagations at my crystal cottage, and they're still doing very well. And I also had a vine on this plant that had leaves that were all growing in a very different manner. And I'm hoping that they are going to start producing new leaves and vines soon. I have them in a pot. They're okay, but they're not growing yet. So they're still working on their root system. But at some point, I'm going to see those vines popping out, and then we'll see if the leaves stayed that same strange style, or if they've gone back to reverting back to the original style, which is with a wider leaf and many more lobes and these slits in the sides of the leaves. We'll see. But anyway, that is all I have to tell you about this plant. It loves to vine up. It grows very quickly when it vines up. You can have it trailing, you can have it hanging, you can have it in any which way you want. You can have a single vine, you can have it bushing out. The more you prune it back, the more it's going to flush out more vines from the sides and become thicker and bushier. And I've seen that's what's happened with this plant because I was pruning it at the top of the trellis it was on, and there it was producing more vines, and that's why it's thicker in the middle here compared to down the bottom where it's almost bare and it will grow out at the top. So that's just an idea so you know if you want to get a thicker plant, you can just go in and prune back and it will start flushing out more there. So I hope these care tips helped, and I hope you enjoyed seeing this plant again. This is also an update basically of my plant because it's the same plant I've had since right at the beginning when I started making my videos. So I'm really happy about this plant. I really want to keep it going. I want to keep it happy, and now I'm happy. So all I have to say now is thank you very much once again for watching Gardens and Crystals with me, Wesley Peterson. Please remember to like, subscribe and hit the bell so you know when my next video will be uploaded. And I will see you again very, very soon. Goodbye.